human behavior and emotional expression are never as simple as they appear. Behind one sentence, behind one emotional outburst, behind one silence that looks harmless, there is usually a knot formed in the past, a knot formed from disappointment, a knot formed from being overlooked, a knot formed from trying too hard to be good. Most people tie themselves to their own history, without realizing it, tied by memory, tied by pain, tied by fear, tied by the belief that, I must be this way to be worthy. Time passes. The knots do not disappear. They hide. They accumulate. They distort. Until one day, the person carrying them can no longer identify where the anger began, where the resentment started, what the irritation is truly about. When a new problem appears, it does not hit only the present moment. It strikes the old knots, the unresolved ones, the unexamined ones, the ones that were never unfolded, and the reaction that follows is far greater than the situation requires. This is how emotional distortion works. If there is no reflection, no learning, no emotional responsibility, negative behavior slowly becomes personality, negative thinking becomes worldview, sarcasm becomes language, hostility becomes tone, and the intensity increases, not suddenly, gradually, until one day, the damage is no longer emotional discomfort. It becomes a broken relationship. It becomes a home that feels unsafe. It becomes children growing up inside emotional volatility they never chose. And at that point, I didn't mean to, is no longer enough. Let's confront something directly. Your emotions are your responsibility. Do not expect anyone to understand you completely. There is a pattern that appears repeatedly in society: polite with strangers, gentle in public, patient outside the home, but irritable, sharp, explosive with the people inside it. The issue is not morality, it is emotional management. Many people spend the entire day protecting their image, avoiding conflict, avoiding disapproval, saying it's fine, when internally it is not fine. And when this happens repeatedly, the emotion does not disappear, it accumulates. Accumulated frustration, accumulated resentment, accumulated exhaustion, accumulated anger that was never processed. Then home becomes the release point, because it feels safe. But safety does not mean someone else must absorb your emotional overflow. This is the trap of the people-pleasing personality, trying to satisfy everyone, while neglecting self-awareness. When you do not communicate directly, when you do not set boundaries, when you do not admit your true feelings, expectations begin forming quietly. Expecting loved ones to understand without explanation, expecting partners to read your mind, expecting family to sense your exhaustion automatically. When those expectations are unmet, anger surfaces. But the difficult truth is this: no one can understand what was never expressed. Seeing someone daily does not equal deep understanding. Loving someone does not equal mind reading. The critical question is, are they failing to understand? Or did you never explain? Many times the anger directed outward is actually disappointment inward. Disappointment that you did not speak, did not say no, did not set limits, did not say, this is enough. And that internal frustration gets redirected to people who were not the original source. Your emotions are not your partner's job, not your parents' job, not your children's job. They are yours. Emotional intelligence is not suppressing anger. It is not smiling through pain. It is the ability to identify, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What is the appropriate response? That does not harm others. Suppression is not strength. Suppression is postponed explosion. You can endure 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, but when the explosion comes, it usually hits those closest to you. And then the phrase appears: I didn't mean it. If you didn't mean it, who is responsible? Society teaches performance. Be productive, be tolerant, be agreeable, do not be difficult. But society rarely teaches honesty with your own emotional state. Admitting exhaustion is not weakness. Admitting I am not okay is not failure. Asking for space is not selfishness. It is responsibility. Communication is not emotional dumping. It is not sarcasm. It is not silent punishment. It is speaking when your nervous system is calm enough to aim for understanding rather than victory. Because when you are emotionally overheated, your goal shifts. You are no longer trying to connect. You are trying to win. Emotional growth begins when blame stops. Stop blaming society for your stress. Stop blaming others for your anger. External events can trigger, but response is personal responsibility. When this truth is accepted, relationships change. You stop expecting others to regulate your happiness. You stop using loved ones as emotional waste containers. You begin asking yourself, what am I holding onto? What am I avoiding? Am I creating new knots instead of untangling old ones? A home should be refuge, not an emotional battlefield. Loved ones are not emotional trash bins. When old emotional knots remain unexamined, they solidify, they harden, they become identity, and the consequences fall on those who did not choose them, children especially. Children do not understand emotional theory. They understand atmosphere. They absorb tone. They absorb tension. They absorb unpredictability. They internalize volatility as normal. And then the cycle continues. This is how generational emotional instability spreads, not because someone intended harm, but because someone refused to examine themselves. There is something particularly dangerous about adults who refuse emotional responsibility, because adults have power. Power in tone, power in authority, power in influence. Unmanaged emotion in someone with power is destabilizing, yet society normalizes it. Everyone loses their temper. That's just how they are. That's their personality. No, repeated unmanaged behavior is not personality, it is neglected responsibility, and when it continues long enough, it becomes character, character that wounds. Let us speak plainly. If you refuse to examine your emotional patterns, you will hurt people, not because you are evil, but because you are unaware. And unawareness in adulthood is a choice. At some point, you must ask, is this reaction about now, or about something unresolved? Is this anger proportionate, or is it layered with history? Am I communicating clearly, or am I expecting telepathy? Growth requires discomfort. It requires confronting the possibility that your reactions are not justified simply because they are intense. Intensity does not equal correctness. Volume does not equal truth. Emotional maturity is not about never feeling anger. It is about refusing to weaponize it. You cannot control every trigger, but you can control whether you turn that trigger into collateral damage. There is a stark reality here. When you do not manage your own emotional knots, you create emotional instability in others. You create anxiety in your household. You create unpredictability in your children. You create fear in your partner. And then you wonder why connection weakens. People do not withdraw because they do not care. They withdraw because they feel unsafe. And safety is not built by apology alone. It is built by consistent regulation. You must become the person who can pause. Pause before reacting. Pause before raising your voice. Pause before assuming intent. Ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? What do I actually need? Is my reaction about today, or about 10 years ago? No one else can untangle this for you. Therapists can guide. Books can inform. Partners can support. But responsibility cannot be outsourced. When you take ownership of your emotional landscape, life becomes quieter, not because problems disappear, but because you no longer multiply them with unmanaged reactions. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of regulation. Strong relationships are not free from disagreement. They are built on individuals who manage their own storms before flooding others. You cannot prevent every emotional surge, but you can prevent emotional negligence. And when you choose to take responsibility, something powerful happens. The cycle stops with you. The volatility does not pass downward. The instability does not transfer. The emotional confusion does not inherit. You become the interruption. And that is strength. Not loud strength. Not performative strength. But disciplined strength. The kind that says, my emotion is mine. I will not throw it at others. I will examine it. I will untangle it. And when you do that, life becomes calmer. Relationships become steadier. Your home becomes safer. And the generational chain of unmanaged emotion ends with you. You are listening to
สถานีหยุดพักคลายเหนื่อย